Welcome to Kansas Ag Report. I'm Ken Rogers. This week we begin to celebrate May as Beef Month in Kansas. We'll talk with Scott Stebner, Executive Director of the Kansas Beef Council. We'll also have features from Kansas Corn, Kansas Wheat, and the Kansas Farm Bureau, along with a weekly update from the Kansas Livestock Association and market information from Pinon.
Kansas Ag Report brought to you in part by the Kansas Soybean Commission, the Soybean Checkoff, progress powered by Kansas farmers. Kansas Farm Bureau, a grassroots ag organization representing the state's farm and ranch families since 1919, kfb.org. And the Kansas Wheat Commission, lending in the adoption of profitable innovations from wheat, online at kswheat.com.
In agricultural news, earlier this week, House Ag Committee Chair G.T. Thompson shared the title-by-title overview of the bipartisan policies and priorities included in the 2024 Farm Bill. He called the legislation a product that happens when the development process is extensive and transparent, which included feedback from members of both political parties, he said, and stakeholder input from across the U.S., and some tough conversations. Thompson said he plans to mark up his bill on May 23rd. Now, Senator Debbie Stabenow chairs the Senate Ag Committee. She also released her Farm Bill proposal this week. It includes summaries and a section-by-section explanation, but did not include the full text. She has yet to say when they will do any sort of a hearing on that bill. The Kansas corn grower leaders concerned with the U.S. Department of Treasury's announcement of eligibility for sustainable aviation fuel or SAF tax credits. Corn growers have been excited for the opportunity to provide corn-based ethanol to decarbonize the aviation industry using corn ethanol based on and sustainable aviation fuel. This announcement on May 30th limited opportunities for many corn farmers to benefit from tax credits available in the Inflation Reduction Act. The IRA requires a 50% reduction in the GHG emissions, but the update to the Department of Energy's Argonne GREET model improperly lowered corn land's use scores. That raises the bar for farmers to meet that requirement. Now, the guidance would require corn farmers to adopt 3 on-farm conservation practices to qualify for the tax credits: cover crops, minimize tillage, and applying for enhanced efficiency nitrogen fertilizer. These narrow rules, they say, will make it difficult for Kansas farmers to participate in the potential $35 billion gallon ethanol market, and will make winners and losers based on the location of their farm, according to leaders with the Kansas corn growers. The current guidance is only applicable, though, through the end of the year, and work is underway to solidify the long-term 45Z clean fuel production tax credit rules. Kansas Corn has been meeting with the aviation companies and ethanol plants to create opportunities for corn-based ethanol for the sustainable aviation fuel. And in an unusual twist, Kansas State University ag economist reporting divergent paths for net farm income and net cash income in the coming year. Jenny If, the Fletchville Ag Policy Chair at K-State, said it is rare that 2 measures of farm revenue move in different directions. She said this is one of those annoying situations where an economist says it depends. She's referring to the projected farm profitability this year. Most areas of the state have recovered from the drought of 2022. The other areas, though, currently experiencing moderate drought. Yet, assuming the crop yields follow normal trends and the fact that economists project lower prices for fertilizer, fuel, and oil, 2024 can be similar to 23 for some farmers. She said the 2024 crop receipt projections show about a 6% growth over 2023 if the yields are similar to the historical averages. If says that combining factors weighing on cropland and livestock production, she said we expect net farm income to increase 21%, but the net cash income to decrease by 14%. She says that economists often focus on net farm income because that measure reflects the totality of the producer's income in a given year. Net farm income includes income as well as changes to materials and inventory. Other factors will be where the cattle industry heads throughout the rest of this year. We'll have more in a moment.
Kansas Ag Report brought to you in part by Kansas Grain Sorghum, growers working together. Learn more at ksgrainsorghum.org. Grass and Grain, online or in the mail, keeping Kansas farmers informed for over 60 years. grassandgrain.com.
And welcome back. May is Beef Month in Kansas. To talk about it, we're joined now by Scott Stebner, who is Executive Director of the Kansas Beef Council. Scott, it's hard to believe, here we are again.
Yes, it's always hard to believe that May comes this quickly, but I think as the weather warms up and everyone gathers around the grill, it's a perfect time to celebrate May as Beef Month. Last week, Governor Kelly met with the Kansas Beef Council leadership chairman, vice chairman, and myself, and proclaimed May officially as Beef Month. And so it's just a great time to remind people the economic importance and cultural importance of beef in Kansas, and to celebrate it the best way we know how, which is gather around a great steak or burger.
Well, that is great. Let's talk about some of those things. And, many folks will say, well, every month, every day may be Beef Month or Beef Day in Kansas, but really to do outreach and focus. So you do that year round, but really for this month, it's a great run up to kind of that unofficial start of grilling season, which will be really right here.
It really is, and yes, Beef Month is every month. In the fall that we have those great recipes in the slow cookers, and the holiday season we gather around roasts, but really nothing screams the amazing, wonderful taste of beef more than summer grilling. And so we're getting in front of consumers in multiple different ways. Our research says that the best way to a consumer's grill is through new recipes. And so we're sharing a bunch of ranchers' favorite recipes. Who knows beef recipes better than the people who grow it? We've also collaborated with some chefs around some great beef burger tips to really make sure that when people gather together and decide to serve burgers for their friends and family, they're going to have a great experience, and beef screams great experience.
And it is, folks that love to have those great experiences. Now, my still best experience, put a little salt, a little pepper, put it right on the grill. But I know other people would have great experiences as well. And so what a great opportunity. And I think people really can resonate then, because those ranchers, those farmers that grow the animals, then what they're experiencing, and then other people, say they live in town, can have that kind of same experience.
Yeah, and I think there's that general trust and that nostalgia that comes with the beef producer. So I think it's great that we can really highlight the recipes that, after a long day, that fuels those ranchers' families. So I think that's going to be a fun one to really highlight this Beef Month.
Now, you brought up a key word, fuels. We're going to take a break and talk about the nutritional value of beef, something that there's been a lot of investment on and has paid dividends. So Scott Stebner with the Kansas Beef Council is joining us. It is Beef Month. We'll take a break, back with more in just a moment.
Kansas Ag Report brought to you in part by the Kansas Livestock Association, supporting members' business interests and meeting consumer demands. KLA.org. Oldie Seed Farms, carrying soil-specific seed. Find them on the web at oldieseed.com. That's OHLDE seed.com. And Kansas Corn, building the future at kansascorn.com.
And May is Beef Month in Kansas. Scott Stebner, the Executive Director of Kansas Beef Council, is joining us. And Scott, before we went to break, we talked about, nutrition and the fuel that beef provides. The Kansas Beef Council has made an investment of having a registered dietitian on staff that not only knows beef, but knows nutrition and can make that connection with maybe some that maybe those on the ranch can't always get to town to make those conversations happen.
Exactly. We are incredibly fortunate to have such an amazing registered dietitian and director of nutrition as Abby Hidari is. She's an absolute asset to our staff, and she really does have that wonderful background in nutrition, and I think the Beef Checkoff in general has a long-standing history of investing in sound nutrition science. And that goes all the way back to things like funding the original BOLD study, Beef in an Optimal Lean Diet study. And now I'm not a dietitian, but what I can say is that study helped to identify that you can have lean beef as part of an active and healthy, balanced lifestyle and still show positive results in your cholesterol levels. And that was increased also in the beef in a Mediterranean diet study. We know the Mediterranean diet is one of those gold standards as well. And the Beef Checkoff funded research showing that beef can be part of a Mediterranean diet and you can enjoy some of those same health benefits as well. Not to mention that amazing flavor benefits that we all know, because we know people are going to stick to diets better when they love the food that they eat. And beef consistently ranks as America's top protein when we ask them their favorite beef. So this is another example of that. We are constantly doing outreaches to health professionals to show science-backed, real factual information about how beef can be part of an active, healthy lifestyle. And I think that is paramount for the Checkoff to continue doing.
And also, do we still have the team beefs out there for running and for biking and things like that?
It's one of my favorite things that we do here.
Aren't you one of those?
Yes,
Yeah.
I am an active cyclist and I wear my team beef jersey when I compete in mountain bike races. But we have about 900 active team beef members. A subset of them are incredibly active, but some just came back from running the Boston Marathon, anything from your local 5K all the way up to the New York, Chicago Marathon, and abroad too. And this is a great way to really show from a peer-to-peer grassroots level that's funded by the Beef Checkoff that beef can, and in my opinion, should be part of an active and healthy diet.
Right, and a very balanced one at that. So I would guess that has to be good, not only to compete. I would guess people come up to you, ask all kinds of questions about, so how does that help you? Because you're probably successful at it. So, everybody's always trying to get an edge. And so it's a great opportunity. Whoever thought of that was a great outreach.
Yeah, it's been such a wonderful program, and it's across the country, but Kansas, we are one of the largest ones. And I think so much emphasis has been on fueling your recovery and fueling your performance. And we know that protein is pivotal in that. But also, it's not just the amount of protein, it's the quality of protein that we're seeing. Once again, I'm not a registered dietitian, but beef is an incredibly nutrient-dense and versatile protein that's going to fuel that muscle recovery, especially after physical training or races.
May is Beef Month in Kansas. Scott Stebner, Executive Director of the Kansas Beef Council, has joined us. Now, Scott, if folks want to learn more recipes or other things, nutrition, or just what's going on with the Beef Council, how can they do that?
Well, for information on recipes, nutrition, and what the Beef Council is doing, you can go to kansasbeef.org or follow any of our social media, specifically Facebook and Instagram.
Okay, Scott, thanks so much.
Thank you.
We'll be back with more in just a moment here on the Kansas Ag Report. Stay with us.
Anything I can help you locate today?
Yeah, I'm looking for some grass seed, but I can never figure out which type to buy.
At Premier Farm at Home, you can pick your grass seed out of a field instead of off a shelf.
Really? You can do that?
At Premier, you can.
That'd be great.
Let me take you to our plots.
Everyone has lawn problems. At Premier Farm and Home, we see it as an opportunity to earn your trust.
This is so helpful.
Only place in the Midwest.
With each problem we help you solve, you'll gain confidence and find that no one can take care of your lawn like you can.
Hi, my name is Rachel and I'm an agronomist at K-State, and today we're going to talk about critical growth stages of corn. So you might be wondering why we care about what's happening to a corn plant when it's only a foot tall. Well, if you look at these two ears, you can see the difference between a corn plant that was taken very good care of during the season and one that had some issues during some critical parts of its development. Which one would you want to harvest if you were a farmer? I think I'd want to harvest this one, which is why we care about all these growth stages that we're going to talk about. And the first key stage is when it first comes out of the ground. That's VE, the vegetative emergence is what that stands for. Basically, that's when that corn plant first pops out of the ground, and that's when its life starts. So at that point, we want all of the corn plants to be coming up out of the ground at the same time, because if they don't come out of the ground at the same time, some of them are older or younger, which means that during pollination, which we'll talk about in a minute, but they wouldn't be pollinating at the same time, which means you may not have enough pollen to fill those ears. When we get to V5, like this plant here, this is a V5 plant, and V5 is important because during this time, the stem in corn first comes above the ground, which is kind of strange to think about But this plant, as a V5 plant, everything you see here is all leaves. The stem is very, very small. At V5 is when that stem starts to have its growth spurt, and the stem actually starts growing above the ground. This is important because once that stem comes above the ground, anything that damages this plant can do permanent damage to that plant when we start looking at ear development. So that's really, really important. If we come over here, we can see some other stages of corn that we're going to be looking at. This plant is V12, which, if you'll recall, means it has 12 collared leaves. At this point, the ears are really starting to develop inside of this plant. We can't see them yet, but it's already determining how many kernels are going to be on each of those ears. Between V5 and V12, nitrogen fertilizer is something that's really important. The plant starts growing a lot, and these green leaves, there's a lot of nitrogen that's in these leaves, which means fertilizer is really important during this time. After plants get to be about this big, weeds aren't as much of a concern because the leaves start taking up more of the light, which means less of it can reach the ground, and weeds aren't as competitive at that point. So this plant will continue growing until we see a tassel popping out the top and silks coming out of our ears. When we see silks coming out of our ears, we know that we've reached R1, reproductive 1, the first stage of the reproductive cycle. We can see on this tassel, actually, we have some anthers that have popped out of this corn tassel and are dropping pollen. So what happens is this pollen lands on the ear, pollination, and then it fertilizes. But if we look at these silks, if you could be here and touch these corn silks with me, you would feel that they are very moist. There's a lot of water in these corn silks. They're over 90% water, actually. So if this plant is stressed and doesn't have enough water during R1, those silks will dry out and they won't be able to do their job. So that's why at R1, farmers, if they can irrigate, might put water on, because that will help make sure that our ears have enough water to do their job effectively. And if you'll remember that ear we had before, those 2 ears, looking at all these different stages, we know that each of them is important because it impacts what the farmer sees at the end of the season.
Grain sorghum is one of the most important cereal crops worldwide, and Kansas leads the nation in its production. Over the years, sorghum has been either exported, used in animal feed domestically, or for other industrial uses. Recently, its use in the ethanol market has seen tremendous growth, with 30% of domestic sorghum typically going to ethanol production. Kansas Grain Sorghum is committed to sorghum research, market development, and education. Learn more at ksgrainsorghum.org.
Kansas Wheat encourages growers with renewed enthusiasm for this year's harvest to enter the 9th annual National Wheat Yield Contest, which is accepting entries now until May 15th for winter wheat categories. We are so thrilled to launch this new website where contestants will find it easier to enter even using their cell phones, said Ann Osborne, National Wheat Foundation Yield Contest Director. The data analysis improved on this new website so we can continue to share production practices that lead to winning yields and top quality. The National Wheat Yield Contest is organized by the National Wheat Foundation. The 2024 categories include irrigated winter wheat, dryland winter wheat, irrigated spring wheat, and dryland spring wheat. The contest will name 26 national winners, including state winners. All national winners will receive a trip to the 2025 Commodity Classic to be held March 2nd through 4th, 2025 in Denver. Contest fields must be at least 5 continuous acres planted with professionally produced, certified, branded, and newly purchased wheat seed. The field must be verified by a third-party supervisor during harvest of the contest field. Entries cost $100 with vouchers available from contest sponsors. Contest rules also require growers to retain a 10-pound sample of grain from their entry, which will be milled, baked, and evaluated for quality if the entry places nationally. For each class, the 3 highest ranking samples for quality will be recognized and awarded an additional $250. Growers have until May 15th to submit their entries. Enter the National Wheat Yield Contest or learn more about the contest at wheatcontest.org. Kansas entrants must be members in good standing of the Kansas Association of Wheat Growers, so renew your membership today or join as a member of COG at kswheat.com.
What does a brighter, more sustainable future look like in our cities and towns, and how do we get there? When New York needed an alternative fuel source to reduce carbon emissions, the city found what it needed in biodiesel made from U.S. soybean oil.
Chuck and Julie Volker run a cow-calf herd in Montgomery County. They manage their herd depending on water and grass availability and market their calves through local auction facilities. Their main focus as cattle producers is to improve the quality of the land and grazing conditions as Mother Nature allows. Chuck has served the Montgomery County Farm Bureau as president, chair of 3 committees, and writes a blog for the county's Facebook page. Julie has helped with the silent auction at the annual meeting and provided goods for the legislative dinner. On the state level, Chuck has participated in the Master's Program and spokesperson training. They are supporting the next generation of agriculture through leading 4-H clubs and have been selected as the 4-H Family of the Year twice. The Volkers are proud members of their local church, Chamber of Commerce, and the Southeast Kansas Power Catbackers. Their vision for Farm Bureau is to help farmers and ranchers continue the success of generational progress.
Darren and Jacqueline's 5th-generation family farm consists of livestock and crops in Montgomery County. They raise crossbred cattle, which are sold for income. They also raise quality breeding sows, which are AI'd, and the offspring are sold to local youth as show pigs. The Felts raise prairie, Bermuda, and fescue for cattle grazing and hay production, and farm soybeans, corn, and wheat. Darren has served as president, vice president, treasurer, and Montgomery County board member. For many years, Darren was Farmer Darren for Coffeyville Elementary's kindergarten class, where students learned about farm equipment and locally produced grains. The Feltses have hosted politicians like Governor Laura Kelly and Senator Roger Marshall at their farm. The Felts family is part of the Liberty United Methodist Church, where they serve on multiple committees, and Darren is the chief for the Liberty Rural Fire Department. As members of KFB, the Felts are passionate about advocating for agriculture in the local schools and within their community.
What if U.S. soybean meal were more than a commodity? If seed companies and the soybean checkoff built a better variety? That future is here. The time is now. To meet end-user demands, the soybean checkoff is investing in the compositional quality of soybeans, including meal. A message from the Kansas Soybean Commission, the Soybean Checkoff, progress powered by Kansas farmers.
A new online tool specific to the Livestock Indemnity Program recently was launched. The LIP Decision Tool, developed in partnership with the Farm Service Agency and FarmRise Inc., will provide guidance on what information needs to be gathered to apply for the program. This, in turn, will help reduce the amount of time needed to complete the application and enable a faster return on assistance. Using the LIP tool, livestock producers can provide supporting documentation and inventory and loss numbers to FSA county offices. Doing so in advance of the initial office visit will help FSA staff serve customers more effectively and efficiently, according to USDA. This tool cannot, however, be used as an application for benefits or a determination of eligibility. Therefore, producers still will need to complete an application for LIP assistance and, upon request, may be asked to provide additional supporting documentation. LIP offers payments to livestock producers for livestock deaths in excess of normal mortality caused by qualifying adverse weather events. LIP also covers losses due to eligible diseases and attacks by animals reintroduced into the wild by the federal government or protected by federal law. To access the LIP tool, go to farmraise.com. More FSA program resources and tools are expected to be added soon to the FarmRaise Educational Hub.
Hello and welcome. Tanner Burning with Pinon Risk Management, giving you a commodity market update for the week of April 29th. Going into late spring and early summer, high attention is on the futures market as we try to make a plan for spring crops through planting and growing season. It is always important when watching markets to recognize near-term versus long-term trend. First off, longer-term trend for grains has been lower beginning in summer of 2023 as the Fed began raising rates and speculative long positions that were built up began to sell off, along with increasing supplies of commodities which drove prices to lowest levels we've seen in 3 years. But as we approach planting season for the 2024-2025 season, we must recognize how the near-term trend is reacting to today's information on hand. Looking at recent trends, first off, corn, recent trend is a sideways pattern, likely until the trade confirms South American final production and the pace of planting and conditions for the U.S. crop being seeded. Similar trend and storyline exists for soybeans. Wheat recently, which led the way down, has had an upturn in the market as we are approaching the final stages of the crop and will head into harvest across the globe in the next few months. The dollar is approaching multi-month highs, which continues to keep a stranglehold on the U.S. exports. Finally, the crude oil market is showing signs of downtrending in prices as the conflict in the Red Sea area failed to cause much for concern in global energy supply and demand. Next week, the USDA will provide the trade with the first new crop balance sheet for the year as it relates to corn and soybeans. We know initial estimates of acres and yields, but seeing how those numbers play into demand and usage tables, along with carry-in and expected to produce a larger supply type result until we finalize crop production and see our summer weather market play out. Cattle are back in the headlines this week as the media has gotten a hold of stories that the USDA is testing retail beef for contaminants of the H5N1 bird flu virus. And although the USDA and other reporting agencies have not shown any signs that the beef supply is at risk, the media continues to run with the story of fear and future threat. Meanwhile, livestock markets have retreated from the upwards trend as the producer is deciding what to do and what's the risk with the news in the market as it relates to their beef. When it comes to following the day-to-day moves in an ever-changing agricultural market, we at Pinon Risk Management look to be a trusted source of information for our clients and being a guiding hand on decision-making and reasoning towards our market plan. To learn more about our approach at Pinon Risk Management, give us a call, 888-452-8751. I'm Tanner Burning with Pinon, and thank you for your time.
That would do it for our program this week. Thank you so much for joining us. Be social with us online, kansasagreport.net, or our social media channels. I'm Ken Rogers. We'll see you next week on the Kansas Ag Report.